border wall. But Democrats are pushing forward with their spending bills and urging Republicans to get on board. Plus, Russia is calling him a spy, but his family says he was in Moscow for a wedding. The latest on the American facing espionage charges. And North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un sending a warning to the U.S. and threatening to change course on denuclearization. And hello, everyone. I am Heather Childers. I am not Shepard Smith. I am in for him as we begin a brand new year. Can you believe it? New Congress as well, but the same government shutdown, unfortunately. Democrats coming up with a plan to reopen the government, but it does not include funds for a border wall, as President Trump demanded. Before the ball dropped yesterday, he told Fox News he has no choice but to continue the shutdown until that is addressed. Listen.
We have no choice. We have to have border security, and a wall is part of border security. You know, I hear so much about the wall is old-fashioned. No, the wall is not old-fashioned. The wall is 100% foolproof.
Well, now, analysts say that a wall would not be 100% foolproof. President Trump also says that he's ready to go and he's willing to negotiate with Democratic leaders in Congress whenever they want. Now, we have team coverage for you. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is standing by. But first, to Kristen Fisher, who's live for us in Washington. So, Kristen, are we any closer to a compromise?
No, Heather, almost nothing has changed. Democrats are still refusing to fund the president's border wall. The president is continuing to say that he won't sign any bill to reopen the government without wall funding. And both Republicans and Democrats are continuing to blame each other on day 11 of this shutdown.
President Trump owns this. He's the one that said in the room, I will own this. And he hasn't called Nancy Pelosi since December 11th. Those two have not talked since December 11th.
The Democrats do not want to give Donald Trump a win at any price. Their whole objective is to see him defeated in 2020. And as a consequence, this is one of the battles that you're going to see.
And it will be the first real battle that this new Congress is going to have to tackle. There's no honeymoon period when you have roughly 800,000 federal employees either furloughed or working without pay. House Democrats have put forward their plan to reopen the government. They did so yesterday, and here's what it looks like. 1 year of funding for 6 of the 7 agencies affected by this partial government shutdown, and funding through February 8th for the Department of Homeland Security. That includes $1.3 billion for border security, but not for a wall. And that, of course, is the big sticking point. That's what this shutdown is all about, Heather.
It sure is. So what can we expect in terms of timing of all this?
Well, House Democrats say that they're going to vote on their proposal as soon as they take over on Thursday. It'll likely pass. Then it's up to Senate Republicans and President Trump. Neither the president nor Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell have directly weighed in on this proposal from the Democrats, but it is highly unlikely that either would support it in its current form because Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he says that the Senate won't vote on a bill to reopen the government unless he is 100% certain that the president will sign it. And Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who had lunch with the president just a few days ago, he said that no wall funding is a non-starter for President Trump. So this shutdown, it could drag on for days, maybe even weeks, Heather.
Yeah, impacting lots of folks, too. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you.
Our Team Fox coverage continues now on the government shutdown. White House correspondent Kevin Corke reporting live from the North Lawn. Good morning, or good afternoon, Kevin. I'm so used to being here in the morning.
Yeah, and I've worked with you very early in the morning. Good to be with you, my friend, this afternoon. I want to tell you, Heather, about a possible meeting, actually a briefing to be given by DHS officials from the Trump administration to a senior cadre of congressional lawmakers sometime on Wednesday. There's been some reporting that that could possibly happen, and I say possibly because we have also gotten new reporting from Chad Pergram, our senior producer over on Capitol Hill, that it's not entirely certain this briefing will, in fact, take place because some of the key players aren't actually here in Washington. In fact, there are some congressional aides that are suggesting even the offer is sort of grandstanding, if you will, by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, the president is appearing to offer just a bit of an olive branch to incoming Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Today on Twitter, writing, border security and the wall thing and shutdown is not where Nancy Pelosi wanted to start her tenure as Speaker. Let's make a deal. Channeling his inner Monty Hall there. Now, yesterday, the president was in the Oval Office. White House officials say he was working, making calls, looking to find a way to end this impasse. The shutdown, as you pointed out, affecting real Americans, many of whom are beginning to feel the pinch of not being paid for the time being, even though they will eventually get paid once the shutdown is over. That said, the president is standing firm, and he wants the American people to know why.
We need, however, borders. You don't have borders, you don't have a country. We don't want drug traffickers or human traffickers or illegal people with criminal records to come in. Our Border Patrol, our ICE agents, our military, we've done great. But you can never do it perfectly unless you have a wall. So we have to have a wall as part of border security, and we're working on it.
That was the president on Twitter. Now, it's also important to point out, Heather, Democrats say the problem is the president doesn't have an arrow in his quiver that could somehow create a compromise unless he comes down off that $5 billion number, to say nothing of how that money, should he be able to secure it for border security, is allocated. Heather?
Well, some had said that he was willing to come off that number a little bit. At least that was part of the discussion. The president has said, though, that he's willing to talk. But does that mean he's willing to, in fact, give up some of that money for the border wall?
Well, I think that's not only is that the right question to ask, I think it depends on the day, the hour, literally the second, because as you know, the president is a bit of a deal maker. Senior White House official telling me earlier today that $5 billion is a hard number. That's not an end number. That's not a beginning number. That is the number, period, end of story. Now, that said, he's a notorious deal maker. Maybe the president decides we can meet somewhere in the middle. We can all save face here. Maybe, just maybe, a deal could be worked out. But the real pressure cooker here is on Democrats, say White House officials, because it's their agenda, Heather, that ends up being stalled as long as the government is shut down, not just the White House agenda. Bottom line, cooperation and compromise may be the only way to come together and figure out this impasse as it carries now into day 12 very soon. Heather?
Yeah, maybe some room for negotiation in terms of DACA, which Lindsey Graham apparently discussed with him on Sunday. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, my friend.
Well, let's bring in our political panel, Democratic strategist David Morey and Republican strategist Holly Turner. Thank you both for joining us this morning on this brand new day of a brand new year.
Hi, Heather.
But
Happy
it seems,
New Year, Heather.
You know what, it seems to be same old in Washington, D.C., especially with Democrats coming back this week, although they will be in charge. Government shutdown seems to be continuing. Holly, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that is becoming very clear is that this really is about the 2020 election, and Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats are only thinking about how they're going to win in 2020. And it seems to me that their message that they are going to go with is we hate Trump, anti-Trump rhetoric. We have to defeat Trump. It is not going to be about solutions. It's not going to be about helping the American people and about providing answers for them and a better America for everyone. It's going to just be about hating Trump. And so I think it's really unfortunate. This is an opportunity for them to get some things that they want. You mentioned the DACA recipients earlier. They are walking away from that. That's a lot of people that would have an opportunity to have a path to legal citizenship. The president is willing to give them this, but we have to secure our borders, and the wall is the way to do that. And it's very sad, and it's very telling about the Democratic Party as a whole.
And David, what about that? I mean, do the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi specifically, do they know that the president and Republicans are not going to accept what they intend to put forth on Thursday? And so they're doing it just to, you know, put the ball in the president's court and make him look like the bad guy?
Well, welcome to the year of divided government. It's wrong to say that the Democrats are the only people playing partisan politics here. Come on. What is the White House and the president doing? This, is an issue that the president himself said he would own, and soon to be again Speaker Pelosi is happy to let him own it. The truth is that this thing's going to get resolved eventually. And if it becomes a partisan blame game, and if one side is wrong and the other side is right, and that's all they have to say about it, the losers will be the American people and the U.S. stock market. The issue here is this is more about a political base issue than a national security solution. Look at General Kelly's exit interview yesterday, the day before. Most people believe, and I was a special advisor to the Department of Homeland Security, you could spend $5 billion a lot smarter, a lot more strategically on manpower and technology. So how could you expect Speaker Pelosi to back down on that issue if she deeply believes that money could be better spent? And by the way, I'll make one more point, Heather. This is just the beginning. 2019 is going to be an unprecedented year. We're warming up here. An unprecedented year in terms of division, partisanship,
Man, I hope you're
uncertainty.
wrong.
Fasten your seatbelt.
Oh, I really hope you're
It's almost impossible for me to be wrong on this one. It's not going to get easier to get government together and working, but the people and leaders that step up will be rewarded for that.
It is. It's just exhausting to think about that. But Holly, on that note, there has been some conversation that Nancy Pelosi would be more willing to negotiate on many of these things than, say, Chuck Schumer was once she becomes the speaker.
That's right. I've said it before. Being bipartisan does not win speakerships. And so I think once Nancy takes the gavel, I think we're going to see her come to the table and negotiate with the president. She just can't risk doing that right now. And again, it's politics getting in the way of serving the American people and the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are not getting paid right now. But I think once she does come in to take that speakership officially, I think we will see that happen. But the president is not backing down, and he shouldn't back down. He made this promise to the American people during his campaign. The American people put him in office to carry out his campaign promises, and he's absolutely doing the right thing. And if he gives in and signs this continuing resolution that the Democrats are talking about, then he's lost all of his leverage in this negotiation.
David, I'm sorry, Holly. David, you get the final word here. You did say that ultimately you think there will be some resolution to this, and what do you think that will be?
I do. Yeah, I do. But remember, the president backed down earlier, and all the critique from the very hard right wing caused him to turn it around at the upset of Mitch McConnell. I think that dynamic will also shake out a little bit here. You know, unfortunately, if he really wanted the wall, it should have been part of an infrastructure bill at the beginning of the administration. He's sort of getting to this promise to the political base late. I think eventually, look, you're going to have the government, open again. I mean, we can't be in this situation forever. So this is a short-term problem. We got long-term challenges to deal with, too.
Yeah, we've been shut down now, since December 22nd?
11 days.
Yeah, we'll see how long it continues. But you two will be back a little bit later in the show to talk some more about some other issues. So stick around, and thank you very much. Well, ahead, the family of an American arrested in Russia says that he is not a spy, and they're deeply concerned for his safety. So how will the U.S. respond? That is up next. Reporting live for us from Washington with the latest details. Hi, David.
Hi, Heather. Paul Whelan's family says the entire situation in Moscow is a complete misunderstanding, and he could be in serious danger. Kremlin officials are not backing away from their claim that 48-year-old Whelan is being detained for spying. The government is not releasing much more information on his arrest, but the family is pleading to get him home safely. Whelan is a retired Marine from Michigan. Family members say he was in Russia for a wedding, certainly not any kind of espionage operation. Now, we do know that Russian authorities took him into custody on Friday. A State Department spokesperson says the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has formally notified the U.S. Department of State that his detention in international law requires Russia grant U.S. officials access to him. The State Department says officials have requested to see him as soon as possible. They expect that Russia will allow this to happen. Now, his brother, other family members say that the entire situation is a misunderstanding, and they just want him home as soon as possible.
He had a request from a friend, and he thought he could help out because he had been to Russia and could maybe help other Americans from the family who hadn't been to Russia to navigate their way around, get on the metro, that sort of thing. But he's a very kind person.
Now, Whelan actually runs global security for an automotive parts manufacturer in Michigan. Family members say he's a fan of Russia, but would never do anything illegal. They also say he's been there many times. State Department officials continue to work on his release. Heather.
Yeah, the wedding, apparently a fellow Marine who was marrying a Russian woman. What sort of punishment is Whelan facing?
Well, that's the question his family wants to know. Certainly he wants to know, and others close to him. State news agency in Russia reporting that he could be behind bars for 10 to 20 years for something like this. But again, at this point, Whelan's family, they just want to get him home, and they say he was just in Moscow for a wedding, showing people around the city because he's been there many times before. Heather.
Yeah, and the family didn't know until they heard about it on social media. Thank you very much for the latest.
You bet.
Well, a baby boy survived 35 hours buried under twisted metal and concrete after a deadly explosion that happened prior to a collapsed apartment building in Russia. Rescue workers found the child. They pulled him out of the wreckage. Search dogs apparently missed the baby during their first sweep. All of this happened in a city near the country's border with Kazakhstan. At least 9 people are confirmed dead and dozens more missing. Temperatures fell below zero, and officials say that the boy was suffering from hypothermia as well as broken bones and a head injury. Well, the North Korean dictator giving America a warning in his New Year's address. We'll have those details coming up, so stay with us. Welcome back. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un warning that there will be consequences if the United States continues to break its promises. In a New Year's address, the leader reaffirmed his commitment to denuclearize the Korean peninsula, but also said that officials in Pyongyang would have no option to explore a new path if economic punishments remain in place. State Department correspondent Rich Edson reporting live from Washington for us. Hi, Rich.
Hi, Heather. In his annual New Year's address, Kim Jong-un says he is committed to his international agreements from this past year. Kim claims he will work to create outcomes welcomed by the international community. And he says he wants the Trump administration to do the same.
If the United States responds to our active and preemptive efforts with trustable measures and proportional measures, then the two countries' relations will advance at great speed through the process of taking more reliable and groundbreaking measures.
That means lifting sanctions. The U.S. and its allies refuse. They say they'll only do so after North Korea dismantles its weapons programs, though Russia and China are also pushing at the United Nations Security Council to relax sanctions against the Kim regime. The U.S. has accused them of easing their enforcement of sanctions against North Korea. Beyond sanctions relief, Kim also says he wants South Korea to halt military exercises with other countries. Heather?
So it appears the U.S. and North Korea are still far apart in their negotiations.
Well, at their June summit in Singapore, President Trump and Kim Jong-un broadly agreed to denuclearization, though the specifics of how to accomplish it and what it means remain unclear. Independent analysts say satellite images show North Korea continues working on its missile program. The State Department says negotiations with North Korea are progressing, though officials can point to nothing substantial showing Kim is dismantling his arsenal. The department's North Korea envoy has had difficulty meeting with North Korean counterparts, and in November, North Korean officials canceled a meeting with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Though officials point to the dramatic events of just the past year and that in 2017, North Korea was launching ballistic missiles over Japan. The tension between North Korea and U.S. allies has relaxed considerably since then. After his New Year message last year, Kim launched no ballistic missiles, tested no nuclear bombs. The U.S. and South Korea have suspended some military exercises, and Kim has pledged his country would not proliferate nuclear weapons. South Korea also says Kim sent a letter to President Moon Jae-in promising to hold more summits between the two Koreas this year. On Christmas Eve, President Trump tweeted he was meeting with his North Korea team, that they were making progress, and he's looking forward to the next summit that he has with Kim Jong-un, though it is unclear when and where it will happen, if it happens. Heather.
All right, Rich Edson live for us with the details. Thank you. Well, let's bring in Gordon Chang. He's a foreign affairs journalist and author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Heather.
And we've talked extensively over the years about North Korea, South Korea. Just listening there to Rich talk about the comparison to just 2017, it appears that we have made some progress.
Well, we've made some progress in reducing tensions, but we haven't made the critical progress, which is getting the North Koreans to give up their weapons. You know, President Trump's policy is based on the assumption that Kim has made that strategic decision to do so. And that's why he's relieved a lot of the pressure since May of last year. But at this point, Kim is not taking advantage of that and really has been going full bore in both his missiles and nuke programs.
And one of the keys to your thought process there is this New Year's Eve address and how the United States was more of an afterthought in it, and it was primarily focused on South Korea.
Yes, what's really striking is that these New Year addresses are usually directed toward the North Korean people. And sometimes they will have messages for the outside world. This time, yes, there were some things for President Trump, but most of it is directed directed towards reconciliation because North Korea wants to take over the South. Never given up that goal. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in is very pro-North Korea, very anti-American. And so Kim has a willing audience in Seoul right now, and so he's directing a lot of his diplomacy towards that.
So combine that with the other element that Rich added there, the pressure in the UN from Russia and China to relieve sanctions.
Yeah, and we shouldn't relieve pressure right now because the Chinese and the Russians have been openly violating those sanctions. We have not called them to account. And things have gotten so bad that the South Koreans have looked at this and said, oh my gosh, you know, Moscow and Beijing are doing what they want. Why don't we? And so Moon, who wants to shovel as much money into Kim Jong-un's hands as possible, has been actually doing that. And he's been violating sanctions, too.
And then that's what Kim Jong-un, that was his message to President Trump, you know, relieve sanctions and let's move forward with denuclearization.
Yeah, one of the things about sanctions is it does threaten Kim Jong-un's hold on power. Because, yes, he does have missile and nuke programs, but he needs money for gift politics, which is the buying the loyalty of senior regime elements. He needs money for Mercedes, for Rolexes, all the rest of it, because that's the way the Kim family has done business for 7 decades. That's the way you're doing business right now.
What about this summit, potential summit, the second summit with President Trump? Should that happen? Kim Jong-un coming here to America at the White House?
No.
No.
You know, Kim is not willing to hold working level meetings with Secretary of State Pompeo or with Steve Biegun, who is President Trump's North Korea envoy. Well, if you can't hold working meetings, why should you have a summit? Especially when the North Koreans have not done anything that they said that they would do. So, you know, this is one of those times where we just got to do the gritty work at the working level before you can have a second summit.
Yeah. All right. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
we
Heather.
will see what the new year brings with that relationship. Well, much more on this ahead, by the way, in the next hour. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to talk about the United States plans for Syria. And day one on the job for Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan. That happened today after James Mattis stepped down. We will talk about some of the issues Shanahan is expected to face early on in his new role. The U.S. Strategic Command, which is responsible for the country's nuclear weapons, it read in part, Times Square tradition rings in the new year by dropping the big ball. If ever needed, we're ready to drop something much, much bigger. The tweet included a video of a B-2 bomber dropping weapons, which then explode. Now, the military replacing the tweet with an apology saying that its earlier post was, quote, in poor taste and does not reflect our values. What do you think about that? Let us know. Well, let's go to Israel now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meeting with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. This coming a couple of weeks after President Trump's surprise announcement that he would pull U.S. troops out of Syria. Trey Yingst reporting live for us from Jerusalem. Hi, Trey.
Heather, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met today in Brazil with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to discuss the future of American plans in Syria and how this decision will affect the Israelis. Pompeo reiterating to Netanyahu that the decision will not affect the American-Israeli security relationship happening currently. The Trump administration conversations with the Israelis will continue when National Security Advisor John Bolton meets with Netanyahu on Sunday in Jerusalem. After setting a 30-day deadline to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria, President Trump has agreed to slow down the timeline to nearly 4 months. The decision does come after pressure from the president's military advisors and foreign counterparts such as Netanyahu, who do worry that the U.S. troop withdrawal from Syria could ultimately lead to rapid Iranian expansion in the region. Heather?
So, Trey, what is the latest on the ground in Syria?
Well, right now, in light of the comments by President Trump, we are seeing Syrian government forces move deeper into Manbij, Syria. This is a region in northern Syria that is highly contested by the Kurdish forces, Syrian forces, and also the Turkish military. Moving forward, though, government forces were actually invited into this city by the Kurds because they do fear a major Turkish military operation that could ultimately lead to more violence against these Kurdish forces, who were previously backed by the United States. Now, although the U.S. withdrawal will take place over the next 4 months, the Trump administration has indicated that America will still participate in the U.S.-led coalition against ISIS, at least for the time being. Heather?
All right, Trey Yingst live for us from Jerusalem. Thank you. Well, a new year and lots of new faces at the White House. This is the first day on the job for Patrick Shanahan, who earlier issued his first memo as acting defense secretary. President Trump chose the former Boeing exec for the role after James Mattis announced just last month that he was stepping down. Now, his resignation came after the president suddenly called for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria that we were just discussing. At the time, Mattis criticized the president's foreign policies. In a farewell memo yesterday, he told Defense Department employees to keep the faith in the country and hold fast. Lucas Tomlinson is live for us at the Pentagon with more on all of these moves. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Heather. Well, that's right. Jim Mattis stepped down yesterday from the Pentagon without a ceremony, unlike many of his predecessors. Instead, he transferred power to his deputy, Patrick Shanahan, over the phone. Now, in a message to the troops, Shanahan said, quote, "As acting Secretary of Defense, I now look forward to working with President Trump to carry out his vision alongside strong leaders, including the service secretaries, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the combatant commanders, and senior personnel in the Office of the Secretary of Defense." Mattis resigned in part because he didn't share President Trump's vision and said he deserved someone with views better aligned with yours. In a farewell message to his troops, Mattis said in part, quote, "I am confident that each of you remains undistracted from our sworn mission to support and defend the Constitution while protecting our way of life." Now, Patrick Shanahan, the new acting Secretary of Defense, faces many challenges abroad and here at home. Heather?
So, given that, Lucas, here's a loaded question for you. What are the top issues Shanahan faces early on in his new role?
Heather, first, Shanahan faces a resurgent Russia who just last week tested a new hypersonic missile which travels more than 20 times the speed of sound. He also faces a resurgent China who marked 2019 with a military-style flag-raising ceremony in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. China also launched a new type of ballistic missile from a submarine in November. Critics say the U.S. must spend more on defense to keep pace. The author of a blockbuster report says America has reached the point of a full-blown national security crisis and now risks losing to China or Russia in a war.
The Pentagon would merely be treading water if they got the $700 billion or even the $733 billion. To advance and make the progress that his strategy calls for, they need to get that $750 billion number.
Patrick Shanahan makes his first public appearance here at the Pentagon when he arrives for work tomorrow morning. Heather?
All right, big day for him. Lucas, thank you so much. Well, investigators are looking into two separate New Year's Eve attacks in Europe.
And Williams tweeting, "My thoughts are with those who were injured in the suspected terrorist attack in Manchester last night. I thank the emergency services for their courageous response." And police did search an address that was right near that train station where they believe the suspect had been living, but they have not released his name.
Wow. And so police in Germany, in the meantime, they say that a man tried to attack Syrian and Afghan people.
They say that has also seen terror in the past as well.
Yeah, I was on the air live when that happened. Not a great way to begin the new year for all of these folks in those areas. Thank you so much, Jackie. And the mayhem continues, this time from Tokyo. A man apparently drove his that up next. Catherine Harris live in Washington with a look at what we can expect. Happy New Year to you.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Heather, as well. Based on our reporting here at Fox News, we do believe the special counsel Robert Mueller investigation is in its final stages, and some media reporting suggests that Mueller could finalize his work and provide it to the Justice Department as early as February. But Mueller's office does not comment publicly on its progress or the timeline. It's worth noting that at the end of last year, the House Intelligence Committee voted to provide special counsel investigators with the testimony of political operative Roger Stone there on the left. Last month, a senior Democrat on the committee suggested that emails between Stone and his associate, Jerome Corsi, there on the right, are inconsistent with Stone's statements to Congress. Mueller's investigators explored whether the men had advanced knowledge of WikiLeaks' plan to post hacked emails from the Clinton campaign, an allegation that they both deny. Another outstanding question is whether Mueller has been building an obstruction case against the president over his firing of FBI Director James Comey and issues related to former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. Legal analysts say they do not expect movement on the Mueller report until a new attorney general is confirmed. The president's choice is William Barr.
The way that the Justice Department procedure works is that the report goes to the Attorney General, and then the Attorney General decides how much of the report to make public. I suspect that Mueller will not turn over a report until there's an actual Attorney General, appointed Attorney General in place.
The incoming chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Lindsey Graham, says the confirmation hearings for Attorney General are his highest priority, Heather.
Oh, yeah. And there's no telling what will happen with that. So there is this new call by Republicans for the special counsel looking at the FBI in 2016.
That's right. This letter from outgoing Republican Chairman Trey Gowdy and Bob Goodlatte got buried at the end of last week. It renews calls for a second special counsel, and it contains new headlines from recent closed-door testimony. According to the letter, the FBI's former general counsel James Baker told House investigators that there was grounds to pursue a case against Hillary Clinton for using an unsecured personal server for government business and for mishandling classified information. Baker also said Comey's decision to recommend against criminal charges in that case was not shared by all. Quote, Director Comey stated no reasonable prosecutor would have brought the case against Secretary Clinton and that his decision was was unanimous among those involved. FBI General Counsel James Baker, however, initially did believe the case could be made, and multiple witnesses testified to the committees the FBI's decision not to recommend charges was not unanimous. Last month, House Democrats downplayed the testimony.
With regard to the FBI and the Department of Justice's conduct and conclusions with respect to the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, and with respect to former Attorney General Lynch's brief discussion with former President Clinton on the tarmac back in whenever, really just rehashing all that.
House Democrats say the Republican investigation was designed to damage the special counsel, and they promised to end it. And on a personal note, with resolutions for the new year, I will look hard at not using double negatives in scripts. I think it's a bad practice.
I got called on that too, by the way, just last week. So Twitter will be all over it. Trust me.
You and I together, united. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Catherine.
See ya.
Well, so let's bring back our panel, our political panel, Democratic strategist David Morey and Republican strategist Holly Turner. Thank you for returning, first of all. So Democrats, David, I'll start with you this time. They've promised that they are going to continue these investigations and actually ramp up with some more. Is that a good move on their part?
Well, I think they feel they have to do it. There are already 12 investigations that have begun of the president. And in terms of Mueller's investigation, nobody knows on this network or MSNBC what he has, what he doesn't have. Only he and his close associates. So far, he's brought 33 indictments or created guilty pleas, plus 3 corporations. So it sounds like there's a lot more smoke than there is not there. We're going to see how this all plays out. I think your intelligence is good. I think by February, we're going to know where we are here. The question, the battle will be, does this report get public? That's going to be very interesting.
And Holly, on that note, as we just heard Catherine discussing, many folks believe that will not happen until this new attorney general is appointed. We have to go through these confirmation hearings. The president's choice is William Barr. What do you think will unfold with all of that?
Well, I do think it is smart, actually, on Mueller's part, just to wait until that new AG is in place. If the past few hearings we had, confirmation hearings, or any indication of what's to come, it could be a long process. I don't know that we will have that done by February. We will see. I know Senator Graham is very keen on getting this done quickly and efficiently and not letting it spin out of control like some of the last hearings that we've had. But again, who knows if we're going to be able to see what all is in that report. But I can tell you one thing, both sides are going to try and use it to their advantage, whatever is in there.
Yeah, you know, David, I'm going to go back to the money issue because you were talking earlier about the $5 billion for the border wall. I mean, how much has this investigation cost so far? You talked about the 33 different charges or counts, but none of them have to do with collusion, which is what originally this investigation was supposed to be about.
Well, I mean, it's a lot cheaper than Whitewater, and it's a lot shorter and a lot more productive. So I think we're not through the process yet, so we can't judge it. 33 indictments and guilty pleas plus 3 corporations is not nothing along the way here. So, there's a lot of evidence that something is going on here. We'll see what I'm not going to speculate. We'll see what the report says.
Holly, final word.
Yeah, I mean, again, though, as Heather pointed out, these are not, we're supposed to be investigating collusion, and none of those indictments or guilty pleas have anything anything to do with collusion. It's Mueller investigating people, not investigating crimes. And that's where the American people have a hard time with what he's doing. And they've lost trust in Mueller.
Yeah, and lost track on where it's going. All right, thank you both.
Not according to the polls.
Well, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Well, let's talk about the new year and some new laws which are taking effect today all around the country. We will tell you where there's a new minimum wage and custody laws for your pet. That is up next. New year, new laws, state rules dealing with everything from minimum wage to animal adoptions take effect today. Marianne Rafferty reporting for us live from our West Coast News Hub. Hi, Marianne. Nice to see you.
Hi, Heather. Good to see you, too. Well, in 2019, Hawaii and the District of Columbia joined 5 other states that already allow medically assisted suicide. And a law in Vermont will now allow the state to pay people $10,000 to move there. Here in California, a ban on the use of non-disclosure agreements to settle cases of sexual harassment, assault, and discrimination will go into effect this year. Those NDAs are thought to have long played a role in enabling serial abusers and silencing victims. Some outspoken supporters of the Me Too movement, like actress Rosanna Arquette, say the law is an important first step.
The past year has never been about a witch hunt. It has never been about one man or even hundreds of men. The past year has been about change.
And the minimum wage is increasing in at least 20 states in the District of Columbia, even as the federal minimum has remained at $7.25 since 2009. And while some will be earning more, if you live in Georgia, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, Utah, or West Virginia, the price of shopping online could increase in 2019. These 6 states now requiring online retailers to charge a state sales tax for certain purchases. Some other new laws are also aiming to curb addiction. In New York, pharmacies can no longer sell cigarettes, and a so-called Take Back Act there makes drug companies responsible for the costs of leftover drug collection and destruction of them. Also in Utah, a lower threshold for drunk driving. That state's blood alcohol content limit dropping to 0.05%, which marks the strictest DUI law in the country. Heather?
But in terms of that online shopping you were talking about, I have a feeling people will still continue doing that. What about there in California?
I'm sure they will.
Tell us about the law impacting animals there.
Well, there's a new California law that requires that pet stores only sell pets that come from shelters or nonprofit rescues. The law will apply only to cats, dogs, and rabbits, though. And it isn't the only change for our furry friends out here. Pets in California are now legally an official part of the family. That means they're going to be subject to custody battles, just like children. But, you know, I feel like our pets are already our children. I know my dog was my firstborn, so I don't know if we really needed a law for this.
I know. I've heard about these custody battles involving pets already. So,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marianne. Great to see you.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, stock markets are closed today for the holiday. Maybe that's not such a bad thing because 2018 was actually the worst year for stocks in a decade. For more about that and what 2019 could bring, maybe some better news, let's bring in Fox News contributor Gary Kaltbaum. He is the president of Kaltbaum Capital Management and an investment advisor. Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you, Heather.
Well, will it be a Happy New Year for stocks? What is going to happen in 2019?
Well, hopefully better than the fourth quarter where the market was basically just destroyed. Look, I think the biggest problem is the market's been telegraphing slower growth, not only here, but really worse around the globe. Markets really topped out at the beginning of the year, and I think a bunch of places in Europe are already in recession. Japan may be in recession, and China's really slowing down, and we're just not immune to that. So when that happens, all the estimates for earnings and growth come down. Our estimates for GDP come down, and markets are definitely reflecting that. And I think there's probably going to be some more pain in the first couple of quarters. But I will give you the good news. 100% of the time, bear markets end, and we end up with another bull market. We always go to all-time highs. You just have to be patient while we go through this.
Yeah, people hear about this, but yet at the same time, we have just like records breaking in terms of people out shopping for the holidays, Christmas spending. You mentioned the GDP in the third quarter, growth now at 3.4%. We have unemployment at the lowest since 1969. So make sense of that, how we have these two different issues.
Well, those are past numbers. The market really reflects what going forward. Everybody thought that the third quarter would be good. I think the fourth quarter, we started off with predictions of 3.5. It looks like we're closer to more to 2. And I think the first and second quarter probably going to be maybe lower than 2. And again, that's what brings estimates down, brings profits down, and brings markets down. But again, bear markets are not the end of the world. Sometimes you just have to have it. It works off the froth of the prior bull market, and then you get going again. And I'm pretty sure sometime during the middle of the year we'll put in a good low and we'll be off to the races again.
So what is the factor, if you were to pick one main factor that influences the markets?
I think two things, the direction of earnings and interest rates. I'm pretty sure central bank, our Fed, has stopped raising rates. I don't think it can go higher. And earnings, like I said, have been coming down. I think they'll start accelerating again towards the end of the year. And I think that's when the markets will reflect it and start going again. Those are the two factors that have always led markets, both up and down. I think we're in that same place again.
Well, and the president invited the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, to come meet with him at the White House. So we'll see what happens if that meeting takes place. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy New Year.
And you too. Thank you.
Well, take a look at this. This is pretty sad. Police are known to love donuts. Well, all of us are, actually. So it's not an unhappy new year for some officers in Kentucky. The Lexington Police Department, look at this, posting these pics on Twitter after their officers responded to a burnt Krispy Kreme truck. The driver made it out okay. The donuts did not. The cops captioning these pics, no words, with a crying emoji. Sad stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Heather Childers in for Shepard Smith. Your World is up next. Everybody, have a great new year. Bye-bye.